students that have sensory issues. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I know our educators are up for the challenge.
And we know that Zoom learning has caused a lot of students to fall further behind, which leads to my next question about standardized testing. Your predecessor in the previous administration allowed that standardized testing to be canceled because of the pandemic, right? There were concerns that the data would be flawed, that the disparities to access were just so great. A number of people are asking you to do the same thing this year, to cancel that standardized testing because the data wouldn't be reliable. But you've refused to do so far. Why?
So I think previous secretary was absolutely correct in canceling last year. As a matter of fact, I was one of the first states that applied for that because we knew coming right out, the pandemic happening in March, and we weren't prepared. A year has passed. And our learners, when we're talking about addressing achievement disparities, there's some difficult decisions we have to make. And one of them is making sure that we do everything in our power to assess which students have been affected and how much they've been affected, so that the policies and the resources that are coming out of the American Rescue Plan can be aimed at those students that need it most. Now, there's no teacher in the country that needs a standardized assessment to tell them how their students are doing. But in order for policymakers and state leaders to make sure that the funding goes to those students that were impacted the most, every bit of data helps. This is not the end all, but it's definitely going to be helpful in order to make good policies and make sure that the resources go to those students who were affected most.
What about gun violence? Can I ask you, as schools open back up, as more students return, are you worried about more mass shootings in schools like the one we just saw in Knoxville?
As a father, it always crosses my mind. I have children in school, and as a former principal, especially during the Sandy Hook massacre, I was a principal maybe 45 minutes away. And of course it crosses my mind. And it's something that reminds me the important work that we have to do, not only to ensure physical safety of our students, but that emotional safety of our students and our communities. So it does cross my mind. I want to make sure, it's very clear that our schools have adapted to the realities out there, as unfortunate as they are, and they do have safety processes. They have protocols for visitors. And I want to let the audience know that as we reopen schools, the emotional safety of our students is going to be something you're going to be hearing a lot about, but the physical safety of our students is something that, as educators, has been ingrained in how we do business.
Mr. Secretary, at the end of this year, among those people exhausted are teachers. They are stressed. Many of them are leaving their positions or taking early retirement. What can you do from your role to help address teacher burnout?
First and foremost, we have to acknowledge what educators have been doing since last March. I think it was March 11th or March 12th. They went from one way of teaching or serving as a paraeducator or serving as a school counselor to a totally different way the next week. And they did it without missing a beat. Yes, we had to learn together as a country, but it happened from one day to the next, literally. And they've worked twice as hard to try to make it so that they're serving those students in front of them and serving the students on the computer at the same time. I visited schools and I saw that happening across the country. So we have to acknowledge that. We have to make sure that we're taking care of our educators, that their emotional well-being is also taken into account as we think about reopening schools. We have to make sure, I think in general, that we pay our educators what they should be paid. I think parents recognize, I know they appreciated our teachers before, but they recognize the challenge that it is to serve as an educator. And I think we need to really continue to honor the profession, but be realistic that as we come out of a pandemic, there are supports that they're going to need to be successful as well.
Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.